Morning to you.
Good morning. Thanks for all your patience with me, Melissa.
You're good. I've been sick for the last week, so I have plenty of empathy to go around.
I was there a couple of weeks ago, and taking me about 2 weeks to recover, and it wasn't even COVID. I don't think.
Same. Mine was just body pains and it's really terrible headache. And it just seems like it just won't go away. Hello,
Mhm.
Helen.
Well, unfortunately, I have COVID, so
No. Oh.
yeah, I thought I was doing good, and I started running a fever again yesterday after 12 days. I was like, wait a minute now.
No.
12 days into this.
My wife and I tracked about a day apart, and she tested negative, and then we both kind of got better, and then she started getting worse again. Then she tested positive, and the way
Oh
it
my
tracked, it looked
goodness.
like the first one had been a false negative. But
Yeah.
Well, I
I've
hope
had
you get
3
better
positive
soon,
tests.
Helen.
Thank you. I'm doing okay. I'm working from home. I wear a mask whenever I go out. I've even been back to the gym. So
You look
I
good.
wear 2 masks and make sure I clean up
Yeah.
myself. But hey, Sally.
I'm there with you. I feel like everyone I know around me has been sick lately or has someone close to them who has been sick. So
Well,
at
it's so
least
funny
we're
because
all in it together.
I've been doing COVID vaccines for homebound folks for a couple of years now. Never got sick. Went to a class
Wow.
in Emmitsburg, Maryland the week before Thanksgiving, and that's where I got it.
That's what did it.
So is that Colin that's coming in now, or?
I think that's Ruby.
Oh, okay. I hadn't seen Ruby in a long time. I like starting meetings on time, but we'll wait a little bit longer for Colin, I guess, assuming he's going to be the one with all the notes and agenda and everything.
No worries.
And Melissa, you're right. Reading those transcripts makes minute taking much faster.
I agree. Everyone told me to look at the meeting recording, which I do. But I like fast forward through it. But the transcript to me is so much easier for timestamps and vote counts and things like that.
Yeah, it's
Well, you
helpful
don't rely
jumping
too
back and forth.
As long as you don't rely too much on the spelling and then
Right.
and the interpretation of the words, because sometimes they're wrong.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Oh, yeah.
true.
Good morning.
Very true. Hey, Colin.
How are you?
Shia, is that right? Welcome, anyway, I hope I didn't get your name wrong. So we're only missing Charita right now, is that it?
I think so, because
Yes.
Shay had to leave.
Yes. Okay, so we will officially call our executive committee meeting to order at 10:03 a.m.
I
Thank
did
you.
throw together a agenda for you, Madam Chair. Give me a second. I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah.
We might not get to everything, but we
I'm not
can.
seeing you with glasses on, Colin.
I know my
Are you making a
eyeballs.
presentation? You look extra professional today.
No, I was a little bit chilly in the office, so I haven't taken my jacket off yet. And I'm getting to the age now that my arms aren't long enough to be able to read anymore. So I'm having to get some reading glasses so I can see a little bit better.
I noticed watching the video, I kept thinking I was having issues seeing, and then I kept doing this a lot. And then I was like, oh, watching the video of these things, doing the minutes, I am doing this a lot, trying to read through the bottom of my glass.
Exactly. I'm like, I need to go get my eyeballs checked, but for the meantime, I'll get some reading glasses so I can see a little bit clearer and make my life make my eyes not hurt as much at the end of the day.
And it's funny, I noticed several years ago, I'd see photos with me in it, and which I really prefer not seeing photos with me in it, but I would see them and I would be like this in the photos. And I'm like, okay, this isn't good. So now every time I see someone with a camera, I just automatically tuck my chin just to make sure, even though I can't see them anymore. I still tuck my chin so I don't look like I'm just arrogant. And
Yeah.
I had a guy at church one time says, why are you walking around like that? I was like, bifocals. He goes, oh, sorry. Anyway,
Yeah.
thank you all for being here on this fine Friday morning in December. Russ, very quickly, did you notice that the note that I put in the first set of meetings at the bottom that I'm not going to be at the December meeting, ASAC meeting?
Yes, I hadn't had a chance to respond. I can be there, and as long as I'm equipped in advance, I can share if that's what's needed.
Perfect. Yes. Awesome. Yeah, that's the last one that I should miss, that I know about in advance at least, that I should miss until I no longer need to worry about it. Hi, Sharita, yay.
I did suggest, since you would be absent at the December HSAC meeting, Helen, that since we don't have a vice chair, Russ could chair the meeting, and somebody from the CDD team could be the minute taker for this December meeting.
I'm
So
sure Russ
Russ
mind
isn't
that.
trying to wear two hats at the same time. Unless he wants to be an overachiever and just show how overachieving he is.
I mean, I've got a pattern where I can do it afterward, so yeah, it's okay.
We can help you out if you need it.
Based on reading everything that has to be done for the home ARP, it sure sounds like the city staff has plenty on their plates.
Just a little bit.
All right. Well, great. Okay, so we got the Colin put the suggested agenda in the chat.
Yep.
Obviously approving minutes, welcoming, setting the agenda. Well, today we're setting the agenda. Do we usually approve minutes for our executive committee? I guess we usually, I don't know. I don't remember doing that in the past, to be honest. But I have not had a chance to read the executive committee meeting minutes. My goodness.
I've kept them super simple, so I mean, whenever we can, if I'm not doing it right, if somebody will just tell me at some point, we can go from there.
They looked fine. I read them.
Take a second real quick, because like you said, there's not that much we do. We approved the
I'll drop
HSAC
the,
agenda and
I'll put the agenda back in there. There you go, Sharita.
don't see, that one looks fine. No extraneous information at the end. So we're looking at October and November executive committee meeting minutes. Is that right? Was there any others? Were there any others?
I think that's it. And I think the minutes were, I don't think there's a whole lot to our meetings except planning the agenda and talking a little bit about home ARP, but it was part of planning the agenda and some things that weren't on the agenda that came up based on conversations that people ask, the off script stuff.
All right. Well, in that case, to make it official, I will accept the motion to accept the minutes for October and November.
I
Thank you,
move for Sharita.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
Correction.
Can
You have
you
a
second your own minutes?
Jonathan, did you
I
say
don't
you had-
know.
No. It's just my name is misspelled. Last name is misspelled on a couple spots.
Okay,
Fix it.
I didn't catch
I'll make
that,
you
so-
plural again.
Well, it's the last name this time and not the first name.
Yeah, and that's in.
We're determined we're not going to get your name right, Jonathan.
Okay, I'm checking. I'll go through them all. Sorry,
Some-
Jonathan.
Take a little bit longer to learn than others. It's just.
All right.
But
So with
there's
that,
where it's we're just
Sorry.
missing it, my last name.
Perfect.
But other than that, I, of course, would vote yes when you call the vote.
All right, in that case. Sorry, I just got distracted with the email. So in that case, since it seemed if there's no disapproval, disagreement, we'll accept the minutes as with that correction and move
Okay.
forward to the next. Can you give me 1 second to reply to a comment real quick? The chat. I'm showing up as in a meeting on my Teams, but she's still sending me a minute. Sending me. Sorry about that. She's in a meeting too, is the problem. So she's been asked a question, so she's asking me for.
For an answer.
I can't help you right now.
Take your time.
It's done. Let me pull the chat back up. I feel like I'm a little bit disorganized this morning. It probably is showing with the fact that I can't talk straight. Yes, I had asked earlier, is it Dashia? Is that right? Are you able to talk? I just wanted to let you introduce yourself and.
Yeah, that's right. I'm here from NCCEH. Just
Cool.
sitting in and listening.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes.
Okay. So we've approved the minutes, so we need to work on the agenda. What do we have for the agenda, Colin?
Pull up the, hold on, so let me find it now. Agenda planning document, there it is. October, November, December. The big thing that we have to do is the home ARP input and consultation. This is required because we've got to get a document kind of put together and show that we've had consultation with the COC and HSAC members for feedback on what to do with the $4 million of home ARP funds. We kind of set it up at the November meeting, and we will send out a presentation or a draft of information for the HSAC to contemplate sometime next week, so that there'll be, all the members will have at least a week to read it over and be prepared to share thoughts and ideas. I suspect that could take a good chunk of the meeting. The other thing that we had talked about was doing a training on sort of what is the COC, what is the HSAC, what is the lead agency, and who does what, when, where, and how type thing. And then I don't remember why we have this lead agency report on here, except for maybe kind of things that we've just a high level what's been done, but it might have fallen under that. I don't remember why it got stuck on there.
Yeah, that was the reason why, Colin.
It's just sort of all the stuff that we do. So that could get folded into the responsibilities and functions presentation. It could be part of that. And then I don't know if there's any other items.
Colin, did we need to come back to talk anything about our white flag efforts? I know that we're supposed to have a discussion in the first 30 minutes of policy and planning on this. Or next week or the week after?
I think it's the week out. It's the 12th. I would
Should we put something on here?
how about if we put something on here as a placeholder? And then
Michael, did a letter get out to city, county, or no?
not yet, because Helen was out and then we've been swamped. And Helen and I were just speaking yesterday about that letter.
Mm-hmm.
And we would basically be asking in this letter for a general support, and Helen made a really good point that we're more likely to get support if we have a specific request, like a specific dollar amount or a specific, like, what is it that we specifically need? Which kind of makes a little bit more sense than saying, please help us, rather than coming in and saying, we need a commitment from the city and county of X for X period of time for X number of years to ensure a no turn away white flag season. So that was kind of something that we wanted to bring back to the executive committee today to sort of talk about once the policy and planning committee kind of lands on, here's a way of making this work. Here is the solution. Then say, hey, here's the solution, and this is what it's going to cost annually to make it work. And then make a specific request versus a general request. But that's, we could do it as a two-step process, I guess, but it would probably be more effective making a very concrete dollar request than a help us with whatever you can get. You might get $1 or you might get nothing.
I also thought that the letter was also to ask city and county to, reach out to our community at large as well for support. Is that still going to be in there, even though we focus on the dollar amount?
City and county, and that's the piece I think we need to talk through in the policy and planning committee of who needs to ask who to be part of the discussions. There's some that, yes, the city and county could absolutely do some outreach to folks. And, an example, I've been talking to Ryan Smith, who's the director of community safety, and he has an interest in white flag as well. So I invited him to join the policy and planning committee, and he's talked to somebody in the community who might have some space, and he's trying to do some legwork to bring some information back as well. So I think, figuring out who needs to ask what. We don't need, city council and county commissioners don't need to necessarily be the ones going out asking the community for help at this point. I think that could be handled at the, department level. But I'm open for other thoughts.
Well, and my memory is part of what we had discussed previously was putting some task group together that could specifically focus on this.
So we opted not to do a task group, and we opted for it to be a part of our regular policy and planning agenda. So the first 30 minutes will be dedicated, because we didn't get any people who initially said they were interested. I sent out an email to those persons inviting them to the policy and planning meeting, and they did not come to the policy and planning meeting. So,
well, and I'd be in that group, and I'd be honest. I mean, it wasn't really clear if it was going to be subsumed in a planning and policy and planning in a way that would result in kind of a little of what we've gotten, which is, hey, let's go ask for something without specifics. I mean, I think the piece around the task force is having a group of people who can not just do the strategy piece of it, but actually talk about the operationalization of it in a way that could get a plan together. I mean, I think that was, at least for me, a part of what I was gunning for, because in the last interlocal, it is agreement, the last thing that was approved for how the HSAC functions. There are committees, but then there's also that ability to create groups that can be more action oriented on something like this.
But I think
that's maybe not the word, but more task focused. And then we can pull in more people like Ryan and others, because I mean, we in the spring, when there was concern about, the financial, the cliff for funding for a number of projects, a lot of the folks that are involved in the operational side of it got together, came up with a proposal, and that did come back, I think, to planning and policy for approval, but that's what went on, and did garner good support.
What I think, if I remember correctly, I think you're right, Russ, and where the policy and planning committee ended was almost everybody on the policy and planning committee wanted to be on the subcommittee to figure out white flag. So it was kind of like, all right, do we want to, one, have policy and planning meet for policy and planning, and then add another meeting to everybody's schedule plus some other people to specifically look at white flag? Or is it better, since pretty much the whole policy and planning committee wanted to be part of the white flag discussion, to just invite others and really make the subcommittee the committee plus others, and dedicate time to come up with that flushed
Got
out plan? And we could use the whole meeting. We just said, at least half an hour of every meeting until we get it sorted out.
Got it.
would be-
Okay.
would be set
That's
aside.
helpful.
So that's
Yeah.
kind of how we ended up at that.
And that's helpful because I think, Shrita, some of us, me in particular, may have interpreted it as we're going to just make this part of the regular discussion. And I think it's just hard to add another. Not knowing that it was going to focus that way made it, I mean, I think I was tied up that day anyway, but made it harder to make another commitment like that. So, I mean, if that's going to be the focus, it's first thing on the agenda, and then people who need to go can go. That's very helpful.
Yeah, it was to try and avoid trying to fit another meeting into everybody's
yeah.
lives.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard to get that many people to schedule a
Yeah.
meeting on a regular basis. And if I'm misspeaking, please correct me.
I don't have any concern with it being part of policy and planning. My only concern was that I was not aware that it was being moved to policy and planning. So it felt kind of like an end run, but
But
It's okay.
so like, I'm confused. I was confused by it because I thought that it would live under policy and planning. And then I was like, well, maybe this is not a policy and planning issue, and this is a community want to solve the problem issue. So that's kind of where I am, because I know that in the HSAT meeting, it was like formulated from the HSAT meeting, like the idea to do something was formulated. So I was trying to figure out if it was falling under policy and planning, which in my mind, that's where it would fall,
Mhm.
or if it was going to be something totally different.
Well, in reading through, honestly, the transcript of the discussion in October, it really sounded more like what we were getting together at some point to discuss was what plans for future years were going to look like.
Right, and so what
And
happened in the
so you have
meeting
a change in timeline, which may be part of what's causing, and maybe policy and planning decided they want to run what's going to happen this year, and the group that said they were interested in looking at future years so we can actually have a planning horizon. Maybe that's something different. I don't know.
maybe it is. I mean, I know historically, when I'm trying to phrase this right. Y'all, I'm not having a good day. I'm really in my feelings about a lot of stuff right now. So I'm just trying to be really careful with my
We're trying
words.
to all figure it out. It's fine.
I'm trying to be really careful with my words. What has happened historically in the past is when people haven't liked the plan that's been come up with, people just set up their own committee, their own group, and they do the work anyway, and then they come back and report ASAP. So I suspect potentially that will probably happen. At this point, like Colin said, most people on policy and planning were really vested in it. We were hoping that it was going to be those other persons that were interested to be a part of the conversation, and they did not join. And I think at that point, it was decided that we needed to do something as opposed to waiting more time, especially when the focus was like, this is an adequate plan this year. We had 38 families without shelter space from our meeting, from our policy and planning update meeting on in November, which was a huge increase from what we normally have. And so at that point, I think that more than anything kind of spurred this feeling of angst about wanting to move forward now. So, I don't know. I know what's happened in the past. I suspect it'll happen now and in the future. But at this point, it was decided to carry it over to policy and planning, dedicated first 30 minutes to be mindful of people's time. Those people are more than willing to come and be a part of those discussions. And if there's the need, or people feel like they want to work on an ongoing group, I guess we can do that too.
I think part of the confusion came in because I had sent out the email asking to schedule a date and time for a meeting to discuss this. And then apparently you sent out an email to Rita with a different purpose, not purpose necessarily, but a different time. And that may have been part of the confusion because I don't remember seeing that email.
No, I responded to your email about, it was gonna be on the agenda for a policy and planning meeting, and because I thought that it was going to be a subcommittee of under policy and planning, I was extending the invitation for people to come to policy and planning in hopes that we would form the group from that meeting. And then none of the other people were there, and then from the discussion from the group, we kind of changed course. That's
No,
what
I think it's a
happened.
good
Because I
idea.
was trying to formally set up the group. You get what I'm saying?
I support it being under policy and planning. I do, but we didn't discuss that that's where it was going to be. And that's where my confusion came in. I think it's a good move, and I think we certainly should keep moving it, keep it in that area. But with the idea that we need to be sure that we involve the community when we're making these decisions and not just the group that's normally policy and planning. So whatever we need to do to get people involved into that meeting is probably the challenge right now, is figuring out how to get them to that policy and planning meeting for that first 30 minutes so that they can be involved in that.
And keep in mind, the Policy and Planning Committee can choose to spend the whole meeting on this. We just said, basically a minimum of the first half hour has to be spent on this because it is something that there's a lot of opinions on, a lot of interest in, and we don't want it to fall off the radar. And we have been, I know I extended the invitation to Ryan Smith at Community Safety because, he was blowing up my phone asking questions, and, other folks say, hey, who needs to be here? Let's make sure we get that invitation out to whoever it needs to go to. So, if there's people that we need to make sure we invite, by all means, we'll make sure that they're aware and have the link and come to the meeting.
Yeah.
And at some point, this probably all begs question. What's the phrasing? It's probably worth, because I think, Sharita, some of the frustration you're expressing, and you've expressed this to me previously, is around when there's a need for action and groups of folks get together to figure out what might be possible. There's a discomfort with how it relates to HSAC. And I think that's a worthwhile discussion. And I think certainly, there's an ongoing group of EDs meeting that Sally convened. And I think one of the conversation points we have that we would, love to, and Sally, correct, I'm sorry, I don't know if I can call me out if I'm not allowed to say, if Sally needs to comment, it's fine, it's up to you. But, is figuring out what does having a strategic plan look like for the HSAC? What does, being able to have better planning horizons look like? Because I think the place, as I said in that meeting, the place we find ourselves in is like, October rolls around, like the leaves falling from the trees, and we start having a group discussion about white flag. And so, and there's many reasons for that. That's not on any single person. It's just something we keep doing. So, I think there's energy there to want to see things operate differently. I think you're in a place you want to see them operate differently. I think we're just not sure yet how and when a conversation is structured to talk about what different could look like, so that we're not just always dealing with kind of one-off pieces. And Sally, I misspoke for that group, just correct me.
I will say the white flag planning for this year was part of the RFP process that we did way back in like April of this year. So there was an RFP that went out soliciting, that's where landlord engagement, rapid rehousing, non-congregate supportive services, and expanded rapid rehousing all came out of that RFP. So the expectation was whoever was awarded that white flag would have a plan in place for white flag season to begin. That's how this year worked versus the last year that we sort of threw it together in the last couple of minutes. The first year Open Table did it in the 2020 to 2021 year. So this year was a little bit of a different process. We didn't have a big community input on it because it was a
Yeah.
part of the RFP process.
Right. So then as part of the issue, I mean, I feel like if I talk too much, just stop me. But I mean, Sharita, from your perspective as the chair of planning and policy or community activist, whichever like hat's better to wear in this conversation, probably switching back and forth. But is the issue planning and policy not having more engagement on the head end of what's going to be asked for? Because it seems like the flag that's being thrown on the field right now is this plan's not adequate. But it is, the original plan is in line with, I guess, what the RFP went out as, if that makes sense. Is that part of what we're trying to figure out, is what planning and policy role is before something like that goes out?
Okay, so for me, this is about the process of how the process is supposed to how I believe the process is supposed to go. The process is supposed to go, if we're gonna have, even if it's all lay community people, it falls under policy and planning. So at some point, you have to formally come into policy and planning. You have to decide it's gonna be whatever it's gonna be, whether it's gonna be members of policy and planning or a special committee that's gonna work on this on an ongoing basis.
Mhm.
And then from there, it's deployed and they work. You have a chair and somebody reports back to the group. That's what I just feel like is supposed to happen from a structure process. And that's all I was trying to get in place. We have a lot of people who say they're interested in stuff, but when it's time to do work, it just doesn't happen. Like coming to the meeting and just sitting in the meeting long enough for us to set up the subcommittee, even if that was 15 minutes, come to, so we can officially do it. What happens is we have a group of some people and then people start to drop off. So it has to be some accountability in there for my sanity as the chair, unless y'all just don't want me to be the chair anymore. That's just what I'm saying. So the attempt was to formally set it up and arrange it, and it turned into something different from what our original intent was. Do we need an ongoing planning group? Absolutely. I agree that we need one. But once we decided that we needed to try to do something right then, it just shifted the conversation. I don't know if anybody has reached out to you, Helen, who originally said they were interested after our policy and planning meeting to inquire. Did anybody inquire?
I've had two.
So is it that we need to kind of tell them where we went from the last meeting, say that we're still interested in an ongoing group and still work on that? For me, it's just about the structure and the accountability piece. I don't want us to out here have people working on behalf of HSAC with a plan and we don't know what's happening. Strictly, that's my position from it. The plan has always been inadequate. It's just an inadequate plan. We need to do something about what our winter policy is. We need to do something about our inclement weather, whether it's whatever time of the year it is. We need to have something in place for people who don't have a place to sleep. That's safe. That's it.
And if I understand you correctly, we're not just talking about when the temperature is below freezing. When there's other situations like hurricanes and tornadoes and things like that, people still need a place to go. Yep.
Colin knows that every time we have some kind of adverse thing, I'm on the phone with him
Mhm.
at 7 o'clock in the morning. Like, Colin, do we have a plan? He's like, no, Sharita, we don't have a plan.
It's the same plan it's always been, the libraries and urban
And I'm
ministry.
so sick of that because it's
And-
crazy that we don't have a plan.
Well, the plan we have is what we've had available to us. And what we're talking about is if we're going to do something different, we need to commit resources to make that a new plan and figure out who and how and where and
Yeah.
what would it cost. And make a request to the city and say, okay, this is, and then we also have to say, is this the, because all of these things all come from the same funding pot. So is this more important than additional supportive services for people in PSH? Is this more important than rental subsidies? Is this, figuring out, because once you make the commitment, you're kind of making that commitment of those funds. I don't want to say in perpetuity, but it's almost this needs to remain in place for a substantial period of time.
Yeah. And I wonder, I mean, if part of the challenge is we end up in these, like, trying to fill the gaps in the last minute. Yeah, Sharita, you're fine. No, this is, I think, a helpful, healthy conversation. You're good. No apologies. So our issue is we have X amount of dollars every time. That's always going to be the issue. We could have $10 million more and it'd still be X amount. And we still have to prioritize within it and then plan behind the prioritization. And I think I spent a lot of time watching videos of meetings in the last 3 days, getting caught up. You're very good at being like, okay, so what are all these pots for and how are they being used? And I'm saying you, Sharita, and basically, like, are we maximizing this? That's how I hear you asking those questions. And a lot of that falls to some extent to planning and policy. And at least my experience being there, and it's not your fault as a chair, it's the group challenge, is like, no one really wants to set a priority and say, we're going to really focus on this versus that a lot of times, which is part of how Jonathan and team end up in that awkward place around state ESG every year. And then I have to calm down, my performance management person post awards. But in all seriousness, like, it's how do we, and this, like, the funny thing is, that group, so we can get the EDs together and they're pretty good at being like, well, we probably need to focus here and here and here. Like, funnily, even if it's hurting our own cause, so to speak, for the greater good, I think there's a good place to have that conversation. I don't know how we give more, in a sense, permission or encouragement or what, where it needs to come from for folks on planning and policy to feel more comfortable saying, right, here are the pots, or here are the big gaps, and we really need to fill in these. And this is the prioritization, because I think we're becoming overwhelmed by not having prioritization done, but not being able to focus. Like, it's almost like that to use the inclement weather analysis, it's sort of like the tornado, hurricane, winter weather, hot weather is the thing at the moment.
Right.
And then we all are in that place, because it's, it's like we'll get talking and it's like, oh my gosh, we have no landlords. And then 20 minutes later, it's like, oh my gosh, bad weather's coming. And it's very hard for all of us, because there's so many things. And at some point we have to say, these are the building blocks we've got to put in place first, and then we'll do the next level. And I just don't know how we get ourselves functioning that way and give permission where it needs to be given for that.
I mean, I think that the home ARP funds give us an opportunity to do some of that thinking. In my mind, I don't know if that is where the community is going to focus those resources, but it's a pocket of money that we can do something that we really, really need. And we really need a day space. We need a place for people to wash their clothes. We need inclement weather space. How do we figure out how we get the best bang for our buck, and then figure out how we can sustain it? We have to be smart on how we do it, because, we get this buck of funds and it's one shot. And, historically, when we make a prioritization, because I think the last couple of years, we've been hesitant on making prioritizations because so many people get upset when we make prioritizations. So what do we do?
Well,
People are just afraid to even have to go through the fight. But we got to do something different, because we can't keep doing this. It's not working.
So let me take a step back for a minute, because where we ended up on the current iteration of White Flag came out of the recommendation that I think Peter Skillern had pulled together a bunch of people to figure out, because the ESG COVID funds were coming to an end. And there were a lot of things that had been stood up and we were able to do because of those COVID funds. And that's where this list of things, these priorities, and there was a list that came and it went to the HSAC, and the HSAC, and it went through policy and planning saying, yeah, we really need to continue expanded rapid rehousing. We really need to put a landlord engagement piece into place. We really need to continue non-congregate shelter. We need to continue the white flag. And there was some dollar figures associated with that. That's how we ended up with a $200,000 white flag program, because that's what was available with the previous iteration of funds. And we, between the city and county, came up with roughly $4 million to cover a 12 to 18 month period of time for these various interventions that were requested. At the time, it was kind of, these are kind of one-time funds because they're not set aside in any budget right now. They're getting pulled from community development savings account, for lack of a better term. And I don't know where the county may be pulling from I don't know where the county's pulling their funds from. But now what we're talking about is saying, okay, these were one-time funds. These need to now become possibly more funds and on an ongoing basis, which goes to a larger budget discussion to sort of further the continuance. And I think you're right, Sharita, as a community, we have been hesitant to set priorities because all of it is a priority. We haven't said, okay, street outreach is more important than emergency shelter, which is more important than rapid rehousing, which is more important than permanent supportive housing, because we don't have enough of any of it and we need all of it. And I think that's what's been getting in the way of being able to set the priorities, because it's all such a need. We haven't been able to say, what is the biggest need and where do we get the biggest bang for our buck?
This is a great discussion. I'm going to ask if we can just put a timeout for just a minute. Let's finish these last few items that we need to finish today. And then if we have time at the end, we'll come back and finish up and decide exactly. I think we're all agreed that we're going to keep this in policy and planning. The white flag discussion in policy and planning, which is definitely where it should be. But let's go ahead and move on, and then we can come back to that if we have time, because we've got 18 minutes left in our meeting. So the next thing on our agenda is let's see, as far as the agenda for the next HSAC meeting, are we good with those items? The performance management, is it performance management update next month?
So I think so.
Okay, so that would be Jonathan.
I believe it's my turn. It's been a while.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking that we did executive committee in October. Well, yeah, October, and policy and planning was in. Okay, so it should be performance management.
Yep.
And the home ARP and the COC lead agency responsibilities, COC lead agency 2022 report, and the white flag update. Go ahead.
Would it be okay? We need to figure out like how much time we want to allocate to the home ARP. I think we should allocate a good portion of time for that. And then we may need to bump the COC stuff, and then maybe prioritize the white flag update plan. But let me know what you all want to do. If you want to try and fit it all in, we can do that. I just want to make sure that we have enough time to get through the home ARP stuff and get through, the COC sort of 101, for lack of a better term.
I definitely think we need to keep the white flag and obviously the home ARP. So would there be enough time for any of the COC stuff? Go ahead, Russ. You're getting ready to jump in.
I mean, based on what's got to be discussed on the home ARP and kind of understandable urgency and emotional piece around the white flag, I can't imagine either of those are going to be short. And to give those the time, I think if anything, we probably need like a preface to COC 101 to just highlight. Because I will say, when I was going through the minutes, I was noticing like I think a lot of us have confusion, not just between HSAC and COC, but I think a lot of staff are, in some cases, staff, we're an agency that's been doing this, and now that I see, they have more than one person saying they're the COC rep. And so, I mean, I think even some real simple clarity on that, because as we get into having to vote around some of these home ARP pieces that the COC has to help with, if we do really have to do some prioritizing, we're gonna have to have that pretty cleaned up. So we might even want to spend 5 to 7 minutes just on a real simple HSAC is HSAC, COC is this, and house
Okay.
groups have reps, and provide that list.
We can do like a very brief piece on that and then do a more detailed version at a future meeting. So like who is a COC member, who is an HSAC member, who votes at meetings?
Mhm.
Okay,
And you can be, I mean, I think the other piece we ran into that Melissa helped correct, that I was asking, you can be a COC member serving on an HSAC committee, but not be an HSAC member.
correct. You're the COC liaison on the HSAC meeting, on the committee meeting, but those committees are open meetings. And, you know, if we're going to do what I'm hearing we want to do in these policy and planning meetings, we really need more. While you might not be a voting member of that subcommittee, you can come to that subcommittee and be invited to be part of participatory discussions to help us arrive at the right solutions for things.
All right. So are we good for the agenda for the December meeting now?
Mhm.
Did I forget? Okay, so Russ is agreed. Okay. All right, cool. Well, let's move on. I think the next thing that we talked about was approving new HSAC members. So we have 2, right?
There
Cool.
are 2. Melissa, I believe you got notification that the county has filled or is in the process of filling their lived experience seat.
Can you repeat that? I think I missed part of what you said.
I think you got notification from the county that they're filling their person with lived experience seat that's been vacant since Michael Best left. So I was wondering if you could share that.
Yes. 1 second. I want to make sure I don't mess up the name. All right. Okay, so it looks like we got notification that they wanted to fill that seat with Angela Holmes. And then they submitted, do you want me to just share the letter that they sent, or?
I don't think you need to. You can if you'd like.
All right. So we got this notification that the Board of Commissioners sent this letter to Ms. Holmes, inviting her to take the former homeless individual seat with her term expiring on June 30th, 2023.
All right, so the commissioners appointed her already to the seat?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So she'll be the new member of the HSAC.
The new old member.
New old member, yes. She was formerly a chair of the HSAC. I do think we may need to meet with her and just sort of chat through. There may be some conflicts of interest due to employment and other boards that she's on. So we'll meet and talk through how that would work to make sure that we don't have any voting challenges. Any questions on Ms. Holmes?
Since she is an appointed seat, we do not have to approve her seat, correct?
No.
Okay.
No, especially because the county commissioners can fill that seat however they want. I think we had to make a decision when there were two people, requesting to be appointed to a seat. Then they sort of say, hey, we have two. Do you want to weigh in on it?
Yeah.
The other seat that's an appointed seat, DHA, Durham Housing Authority, has a seat on the HSAC that has been sitting vacant for a couple of years now. We've been trying to get somebody to fill that seat for quite some time. And I had a phone call yesterday with someone from DHA wanting to know kind of more about the DHA HSAC intersection and what this entails. And Jason Brenner will be filling the DHA seat on the HSAC. Jason is DHA's in-house attorney. So when I was talking with him, I said, really the person who needs to be on here needs to be somebody who knows all of the components of DHA and kind of can speak about how they work, what they can and can't do, some of these things. And, sort of thought about Ashanti and thought about Blair. And he's like, well, I'm the one person in DHA who works with everybody in every department and report directly to Anthony Scott, the CEO. So I think he'll be a good addition, and we'll be able to get us information we need, answer questions, and contribute productively. And if he doesn't know the answer, it's not going to take him long to get an answer, just because of his having to work with all aspects of DHA.
We've interacted with him on some encampment related pieces, and he's been very helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So based on my conversation with him yesterday, I think he'll be a good fit. So he'll be at the meeting on the 14th as well. We still have a few seats that are still open. I think public safety, or I forget what it is. The sheriff used to fill that seat. And it may be one of those things that whether the sheriff or police have historically filled that seat, it might be a better fit for community safety, since they the law enforcement seat. Community safety may be a better piece for that because they intersect with the sheriff's department and stuff, but we need to think through.
Like someone from the heart team, is that what you're specifically?
Yeah, or somebody from the heart team, because they intersect with a lot of the people experiencing homelessness on this legal, and they intersect with the sheriff's department and frequent flyers in the justice system. So we'll need to sort of talk through and figure out who that might need to fit that seat. But it seems like somebody from the community safety team might be a better fit and have the time to do it versus a sheriff or a Durham police officer sitting in that seat, since they intersect with all of them. But thoughts on law enforcement seat?
Is it just one seat, or is there a city and a county?
Just one.
Just one. Okay, so we had a deputy in that seat before. if I remember
Sheriff,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And my recollection is the sheriff was in there because the sheriffs are responsible for the jail. If I remember, it's not, Durham police aren't responsible for the jail, the sheriff's office does. So that was why the sheriff was in the seat, because they would have insight into the jail system, exits, challenges, as well as the working with unsheltered. Now that there's a community safety department, it seems like they kind of intersect with a much wider variety of folks. And a lot of the nonviolent offenses that involve people experiencing homelessness. as well as the sheriffs and police. So they kind of intersect with everybody. So I might, just thinking off the top of my head, they might be a good fit since they could convey information from a variety of angles and take information back to a variety of stakeholders.
Okay, so we've announced the 2 members that are they, I assume that we're planning on them joining the December meeting.
I think so.
Angela,
Yep.
Jason, okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Jason definitely will. We'll forward him the information. And assuming Ms. Holmes is available, she could join as well. So we'll make sure we send her the information as well.
Is there any official action on these I need to record? It sounds like Angela's just by the county but does the HA's person need to be approved?
I don't think he needs to be approved because it's an institutional seat. I think they can just appoint somebody to fill that seat.
Okay.
And we've just been waiting on them to I think we do need to have a different, they just get to fill their seat.
But what other seats are still empty? I know Shays is empty now.
Shays is empty now. The
Is that-
county is aware of that.
Or is hers a county seat?
Or what's
I
her-
believe so.
There's an open county like private sector one.
For Dr. Birch.
Okay,
Dr. Birch's old seat's still available. Workforce Development has an empty seat,
okay.
and that's an institutional, and I think they get to just appoint somebody. I'll have to go back. Ruby and I put together a list of empty seats a while ago for a report that we had to do. So Ruby, Melissa, and I can kind of pull that list together and get with the institutional folks now that a lot of the transitions have seemed to settle down, and
Yeah.
a lot of institutions seem to be a little bit less frantic after COVID and might be able to take a moment and appoint people.
Thank you. We have about 3 minutes left now, according to my clock. And we know that Shay has resigned. She's moved to Hickory. And so we now need a new vice chair. Do we have anyone that in mind that could do that role?
Am I correct? They'd be preparing to become
Yes.
chair next year. Like that's the step. Okay.
Whoever is vice chair automatically moves to chair, but secretary does not automatically move to vice chair. You have to elect the secretary and the vice chair every year.
Okay.
Hmm.
So if you're ready to move up now, Russ, we could
I couldn't see Sharita's face on that one, but I don't think it was a smile. I'm teasing.
Can't hear you, Sharita.
uh,
I don't have a comment at all.
All right, we got,
And I assume the institutional folks couldn't be
Mhm.
reps.
well,
Has
because
anyone ever-
I am one.
Oh, okay.
I'm the EMS rep.
I think I
Has
talked,
anyone- Go ahead, Collins.
I had talked to, let me reach out to Colleen Herbert, and I mean, she probably has too much on her plate.
I was just thinking about her,
Question
I
is
don't
whether or
know.
not she would want to be chair next year, because vice chair wouldn't be a big lift for her currently, but the question is, what are her plans next year, and would she be willing to assume the chair?
Secretary is the busiest role
Mhm.
by far.
Any other,
Colleen would be a really strong option. Like, The other person I wondered, and I've interacted with her in different ways, is Eliza from Duke. I mean, she's one of the two main people that runs the kind of convenes the Duke Affordable Housing. I'll call it council. The name's in the process of changing.
Duke has an Affordable Housing Council?
That's for a version of it. It's been more of a task force that's turning into a council after the first of the year. It's been going on for 3 years. It's mainly people who do affordable housing, like build it, like DHIC is there, Habitat's there, we're there. I mean, we're kind of the small player in the conversation. CASA's there. It really convenes
Oh,
around
wow.
like literally the affordable housing side of it. But she and Mamie Webb Bledsoe are the ones who convene and run it. So in terms of the effective running of meetings and that kind of piece, she's quite strong.
Yeah, I've spoken to Eliza recently. She sent me a message for on something. It might have been about white flag. I'm not sure right now. But does she have a seat already?
Yeah,
Yeah, she's been coming, gosh, at least for 2 years.
Is her seat appointed or is she elected?
it's one of the institutional.
Okay, so reason I asked is because elected seats typically have a term limit. Appointed seats
Mhm.
don't necessarily. Don't always have a term limit. And if we wouldn't want her to agree to be vice
Yeah.
chair, she's gonna end up not being on the board much longer. But this would be through July anyway, up till August anyway.
I mean, even if she wasn't keen on it now, it might, and Colleen was keen, it might be that we could get her more involved in one of the committees and prepping for vice chair next year, like thinking that far ahead.
Mhm.
Or you can move up the vice chair and she can take secretary.
I mean, I'm pretty happy. My only concern would be, and Terry and I talked about this, because I guess there have been, Terry and I talked about it when Ryan was going to become vice chair. And at that time I was like, how does that work? Because of the conflict piece. And Terry said, oh, no, that's happened before. In terms, it's been normal. So I missed that.
Just means you can't vote on anything.
I mean, I can't now.
Being part of the discussion is even challenging at times. You have to be
Mhm.
careful what part of the discussion you take a role in. So,
Mhm.
so we're looking at Colleen and Eliza as potentials.
I mean, I'd be happy to reach out. I mean, we talk pretty regularly just to suss out her, because she's kind of on my list of people that I'm like, we need to get her on a committee, or maybe start on I was thinking like, let's start on a task force and then go to a committee of some sort, just to kind of, I think she may simplify a number of people that don't feel like they know enough to get this involved. But if we can find a path to kind of bring them in, it'll help. So, but I'm happy to reach out to her if that'd be of interest for now or later. So
That'd be great. We
Yeah.
are already
Sure.
over time. Go ahead, Colin.
Sharita, you just sent, I see a note, you just sent Colleen a note.
I did.
Okay, so let's wait till we hear back from Colleen before we reach out to
Eliza.
Eliza. We could reach out to both of them and then have an election and people can choose between the two, but
oh yes, that's what that's good on the one hand, but not great for the spirit if you're in the
Right.
whoever loses gets to be secretary. How's that?
we'll have a three-way race. All right, so we'll wait. So Sharita, when you hear back, you'll just email me.
I'll email you and Helen.
Thank you.
That'll work. Thank you, ma'am. All right.
So the only thing left would be vacancies on committees, and those are
Right.
still there and don't
They're
seem
gonna be
to
there
get-
forever because nobody wants to join committees.
Yeah, but we'll keep pushing for it.
That's all we
And are
can
there
do.
open COC liaison positions? I should know that, but
One on policy. Well, oh, you mean liaison positions?
Yeah,
Are there?
yeah, because Shay was on Shay was the
No, we're not talking about-
secretary, and I think she was on both committees, if I remember correctly.
Well, Shay was not COC, was she? Was she COC?
He's HSAC.
Yeah.
Yeah, Shay was a COC liaison.
But I know Christie was on planning and policy as a COC liaison, so I assume
Yeah.
is that
That's still-
open or?
I think that one's still open. We can get the account again because it's
Okay.
been moving around so much with people coming and going, and
Didn't we fill ours? We added,
Tammy.
Miss Lawrence and the last meeting, it was Tammy Lawrence and one other person, right?
It was Jerome Stevens and then Christy left, so there's one COC liaison.
Gotcha.
With Shay leaving, but Shay wasn't on that committee.
she was on performance
But
management.
Drew Cumming did leave.
Mhm.
And that's another HSAC seat that's open. And that's about it right now.
That's right. He was going to planning. Wasn't he going to planning and
He was a
policy?
planning policy meeting person.
And then performance management, Shantae, Danielle, and Drew, Sally resigned. But and Shay was a member of that committee. Also Alicia Thompson is a member, but she hasn't been joining. So maybe to
Okay.
reach out to her to rejoin the committee or just join meetings.
Was Alicia on policy and planning or performance management?
Alicia is on both, but she
Oh.
hasn't.
I just talked to her yesterday. I wish I had that in the front of my mind. I could have asked
So
her.
we're short HSAC members on committees as well as COC liaison.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is it possible in a future meeting to look together at the roster and then even be thinking, because I'm just trying to think through, like, at least on the COC liaison side, feels like there's a number of people that like sit in on the what is it?
HSAC meetings.
No. Well, that too. The Council to End Homelessness in Durham said, is that what it's called? And if we could think through even like people like early, mid, later career in a sense, and start targeting and working, I think we could work with some of the EDs to be like, can you please help us find some people? And here's who we think we'd like you to ask.
Mhm.
My concern right now is with HSAC members no longer on the subcommittees, what's our ratio? Do we have more COC than HSAC? Because there's supposed to be a certain ratio of HSAC to COC.
I was just gonna say, I actually pulled the rosters to send to the chairs of performance management and policy and planning. They have not been sent out yet because I already emailed Alicia and Angela to see if they would be joining meetings. I have not yet received a response. So I can send you what I currently have with Alicia and Angela both on those lists. And then I can send updates if they do change plans about being involved in those meetings.
Angela would be very strong on the planning and policy side as a person with lived experience.
There's two Angelas, and the
Oh,
Angela
Angela
Melissa's talking about is Angel Vic Lewis.
Sorry.
Angel's on the
Yes, sorry.
Angel's on policy and planning, but she hasn't been coming to policy and planning, and I think she's kind of popped in and out of the HSAC meetings. So we're trying to determine whether or not where she stands on still remaining tied to HSAC. Last I talked to her, she was planning to remain on HSAC, but come off of policy and planning.
Okay.
But it's been a while.
And she's on both subcommittees as well, policy and planning and performance management.
Sorry, my internet froze up for a minute, so I missed part of that conversation, but that's okay.
We'll get, essentially what we'll do is we'll get everything pulled together and have an attendance list, and we can look at it at our next
Okay.
exec committee meeting of what are the percentages. So it's a visual thing rather than talking it through.
Yeah.
We can do that.
Yeah.
You got it.
Okay. Well, our next exec meeting will be January 6th. Are there any more burning subjects that we just absolutely need to discuss today? Because we are already past time.
No, but just to acknowledge, I think we'd all like to find ways to continue the earlier conversation in a
Absolutely.
focused way. So
Mhm. I know the next policy and planning meeting is December 12th. And that the plan is to have a strong discussion about that then. Is it okay to focus on it at that time, Russ?
Oh, yeah. I mean, as long as, for me, that's fine. Sharita, is that timing wise okay?
Say it again, Russ.
If I'm following correctly, I think the question was in terms of continuing the earlier conversation, if we pick it up in January, is that what you were saying, Helen?
No, December 12th at the next
Oh,
policy.
the white flag piece.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
which one were you talking
Oh.
about?
The strategery, and just the relation, well, the piece that Sharita was bringing up about the relationship of other groups pushing pieces forward and just some of those dynamics.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
You want to discuss that in policy and planning?
No,
No, I was
I
misunderstanding.
did not.
In this
I
meeting,
thought you were talking about white flag.
I didn't even take a breath before that answer. No. I mean, I think in this group is a good place to kind of be thinking through some of that. So, yeah. So yes, white flag, policy and planning.
I misunderstood.
No. I was looking on the minutes and got myself confused. I apologize.
Okay, so unless we need to meet again to discuss that before January, the other thing is what you were talking about, then we can hold that until January 6th. And the white flag will be talked about at the December 12th policy and planning meeting. Okay, is that good? Am I on track now? All right.
sounds
Well,
good.
if there is nothing else, Colin, is there anything else agenda wise or anything else that we need to talk? Okay.
I don't have anything. And if you want, Helen, you can forward the invitation to the policy and planning meeting to the names that
Oh,
expressed
yeah, I've
interest.
got it on my to-do list already, so I can
Or-
remember to do
Or you
that.
can send us the names and we can forward, you let us know which is better for you.
I'll make, yeah, I'll make sure it gets done, whether I send it to Sharita or y'all, or it'll get done.
Yeah, or send
Today.
it, yeah, or you can send it to Melissa, whatever.
Yeah.
We'll get it done.
All right, perfect. Well, in that case, I will take a motion to adjourn
I move.
and a
I'll
second.
second.
If you're
All right. Thank you
opposed,
all.
if you're improving, have a great day and we will see you.
Bye,
I
guys.
will not see any of y'all again, probably, except maybe at other meetings before Christmas. So have a wonderful Christmas, Merry and a Happy New Year. And I look forward to seeing you I'll see you. No, I'll be policy and planning in December. So I will see you all
Okay.
again. Never mind.
Okay.
All right. Sounds
All
good.
right.
She takes it back.
Bye-bye.
Bye all. Have a good weekend.
Have a Merry Christmas anyway, but
Bye.
all right, bye.